Psalms 29. Ascribe to the Lord, O heavenly beings, ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due to his name. Worship the Lord in his splendor and holiness. The voice of the Lord is over the waters. God of glory thunders. The Lord over many waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty. The voice of the Lord breaks cinder. The Lord breaks the cinders of Libyan. He makes Libyan to skip like a calf, and Syrian like a young wild ox. The voice of the Lord flashes forth flames of fire. The voice of the Lord shakes the wilderness, and the voice of the Lord shakes the wilderness. The Lord shakes the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of the Lord makes the deer give birth, and strip the forest bare. And in his temple all cry, Glory. The Lord sits enthroned over the flood. The Lord sits enthroned as King forever. May the Lord give strength to his people. May the Lord bless his people with peace. This is David's psalm of just praising God. He talks about the voice of the Lord. I want to count. Let's see. The voice of the Lord, the voice of the Lord, 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 6 times. That's interesting. So 6 times David mentions the voice of the Lord. And we know on the 6th day God created man and he breathed into man with his breath. And right here he's talking about the voice of the Lord. But I want to point out just kind of basic overview of what I'm looking at when I look at this. It starts off ascribe to the Lord, and then verse 2, ascribe to the Lord. You heavenly beings ascribe to the Lord the glory and his strength, and then ascribe to the Lord the glory due to his name. So David starts this off praising God, worshiping God, who God is. So when we come to God and we pray to God, the first thing we need to do is honor his name. Remember when Jesus was talking about how you pray the Lord's Prayer, he says, you started off saying, hallowed be your name. When you pray to God, when you come before God, before his throne, you come and you initiate praising God for who he is. And this is what David does right here in the first 2 verses. And verse 3, he talks about how great God is, how the Lord is over the waters, how God of glory of thunder. And he describes God as over all creation, powerful in majesty, right? He's not over all creation, all the natural creation. When I say natural, he talks about water and thunder and how powerful God is. Like naturally, God is amazing, right? But then he starts talking about the nations. He talks about how the Lord breaks the cedar and breaks the cedar of Libyan. He describes the nations, Libyan and Sihuran. Sihuran. I'm probably saying that wrong. And then right here, the voice of the Lord flashes forth and then describes the voice of the Lord being like flames of fire. So like lightning is what I think of. Flames of fire, lightning. And then shakes the wilderness. He describes nature. But then he says, shakes the wilderness of Kadesh, another nation. So David mentions Libyan, Syrian, and Kadesh for purpose. And then he gets back to creation. He talks about the deer giving birth and how the voice of the Lord makes the deer give birth. The voice of the Lord strips the forest bare, and in his temple all cry glory. He talks about creation and people. He says, in his temple all cry glory. So he goes back to people groups, creation and people groups. The Lord sits enthroned over the flood, creation. The Lord sits enthroned as king forever. That's going back to people group, right? Because he's king not only over creation, but over all people. May the Lord give strength to his people, and may the Lord bless his people with peace. So throughout Psalms 29, David is talking about creation, how God is over all of creation, and people groups, different types of people groups. And then he just includes all his people in his temple, all cry. the only people in his temple would be the Jewish people at this time of age. Back then, only the Jewish people were allowed to go so far into the temple. Sometimes you would see Gentiles going, but like during the time of Paul, if a Gentile walked into the temple, it was a bad thing. So Psalms 29, recap, people groups, creation,